Hello, today we're going to look at the skeletal system. So this is essentially most kids are pretty familiar with this, so that's why it's more of a homework assignment. If we look at the overall function and structure of the skeletal system is essentially bones. Bones are made of several tissues. They're primarily made of collagen and calcium. So your bones are hard because they're essentially made of cells that fill with this calcium, which hardens, kind of like in earth science when you learned about different minerals and things um, would fill in and then harden as like the water evaporated. It's kind of similar to that. So they're very hard and dense. You have about 206 bones in the human body. All right, so let's look real quick at the functions. So the overall function of your skeletal system is the first one, which is to support. That it's the hard framework that supports and anchors all your soft organs, your muscles, and stuff like that. Without the skeletal system, we would essentially be like big blobs, like jellyfish or the blobfish, if you've ever seen the blobfish. Um, it also is protection that in many places like your rib cage and stuff like that, that they're going to surround those internal organs to protect your lungs and your heart, as well as like your skull protects your brain, your vertebrae help protect your spinal cord. So they do give some protection to the vital organs that are inside of your body. They allow for movement because along with the muscular system, then that allows for your body to actually move the muscles, move your bones. Storage, your bones actually produce a lot of the minerals and lipids in your body. So um, they're very important in helping keep you in homeostasis to store those things. And then last is they play a role in blood cell formation. That you have this stuff we're going to briefly talk about called bone marrow, and that's where a lot of your red and your white blood cells are produced. Okay, so parts that you need to know. The main two parts of the skeletal system, the sections, if we look at structure, is what's called the axial skeleton and the appendicular. So the axial skeleton is right here. It's essentially your skull with your vertebrae and your rib cage. So it's kind of like I tell kids your head and your trunk is your axial skeleton. So it's your skull, vertebrae down, and then your rib cage and all of that that holds in like your heart and your lungs and stuff like that. Your appendicular, then, if you look over here, is essentially your limbs. It's your two arms and your two legs, including like your hip bones. So your hips down and your shoulders out. That's your appendicular. So you got your axial, which is your head and trunk. Your appendicular are your appendages. That's why they call them your appendages. They're part of the appendicular skeleton. There are a couple different types of bones in your body. They all kind of do different functions. So you have what are called long bones. Long bones are the ones that are like in your arms and your legs, so like your humerus, your femur. You're also going to see that these play a major role in movement, and this is where most of your red blood cells are produced inside of the bone marrow that's inside of these. You do have short bones, which are essentially exactly what they mean. They're short in length and stuff like that. These form parts of your body that obviously aren't very long, not like your arms. So, like you would have some of these short bones, like in your wrist and your ankles and stuff like that. You have irregular shaped bones throughout your body. So, like all over your body, as part of like the back of the skull, you have some of these, like your pelvis. So, your hip bone is an irregular shape that has the coccyx, which is your tailbone, and all this stuff. So it's very unique. And then you have flat bones, which would be like your scapula or your shoulder blade back here, that are very thin and flat. And those do things like protect soft organs, stuff like that. All right. Um, so we're going to real quick look at like joints. So in your skeletal system, you have joints, and joints are essentially anywhere where two bones meet, right? And then within your body, you need to know the difference between these. So a ligament is essentially any of this connective tissue that holds a bone to a bone. So like here's your femur and your knee, and it's holding the femur connected to your fibula this is a ligament. It's holding a bone to a bone. Tendons, on the other hand, like you'll see when we do the muscular, is how muscles attach to the bones to move them. So ligament, bone to bone, tendon, muscle to bone. That's really what you need to know. So inside your joints, you often also have cartilage, which is another type of connective tissue. The cartilage is often what covers the ends of the movable bones. So like if this is your, like say, knee, and you got uh, right here, this bone and this bone are coming together. This is the cartilage. And when you dissect the chicken bones, you'll see that on the ends, they have this kind of rubbery cartilage that's very lubricated by the capillaries. Um, it reduces the friction so that these bones don't rub together. Now, as people get older, sometimes what'll happen is they get this cartilage breaks down, or sometimes you'll hear about like athletes that tear their cartilage, and you know all this other stuff like their rotator cuffs and stuff like that, and they have tremendous pain. It's because this cartilage is damaged, and then the bones start to rub against bone. And anytime you have bone on bone, it's going to create more friction, which therefore is going to cause more pain. So oftentimes people who, as they get older, have to have hip replacement surgery. Some of that hip replacement is the ball socket joint, where your femur goes into the socket of your hip bone. The cartilage will wear down in that, and it hurts a lot for them to walk and all sorts of stuff. So then they have to go in and repair that. Okay. These are 5 of the major joints found in the body that you would want to know. So you have what are called pivot joints. This would be like in your neck, and it means exactly that, which it gives like side to side and back to forth movement. It's how your head can turn like this, is the bones are going to kind of pivot along this central idea. You have hinge joints. These would be like your elbows and your knees that allow your legs and arms to kind of like hinge and move back and forth like that. You have fixed joints, believe it or not. It's still considered a joint because it's where 2 bones meet, but a fixed joint, really the most known ones are the fused bones in your skull. They don't move. It's just where they come together, and then your body will actually produce fibers that will like almost glue and hold them together for that protection of the skull. You have some of these fixed joints in some other parts of your body. This will actually tend to happen at the end of your growth and development. So like when a baby's born, they have the soft spot. That's because their skull bones haven't actually fused yet, because they're still growing. So as the brain grows and the baby grows, the skull's going to get bigger, and then at the end of puberty, at the end of development, then they'll actually fuse and seal to give that protection. You also can have ball and socket joints. So a ball and socket joint is like your shoulder. Also, it would be like your hip bone down here. It's where you have the ball of one bone fitting into the socket of the other, and it allows for this circular movement. And then you have gliding joints, where these are sliding. These are like in your wrist and your ankles, where essentially, if you look at the diagram, it's just going to allow for like one bone to kind of slide around on the other, which allows you to move your wrist in all these different directions and stuff like that. That's why you have so many small bones in your wrist like that. Okay. So if you look at a long bone, so like if we look at this one, because this is the one that most people, for this class at least, we're going to just kind of look at the overall structure. The bone structure for a bone, a long bone, is actually pretty interesting. So the way the bone works is you actually have a periosteum. The periosteum is this pink part, and it's like the hard outer covering. Okay, it's for growth and repair. So the outside of the bone is very hard. Then inside of it, what's in gray, you have what's called compact bone. Compact bone is the hard, strong layer of the bone. So you have this kind of like hard outer layer. Then you have compact bone, which is right here in the middle, which is the hard, dense part. And then in the middle, you actually have marrow. And you can, like you're going to see, you can have 2 types of marrow, but this is actually hollow in the middle with cells that are there that are going through mitosis that are just producing red and white blood cells, depending on if it's red marrow or yellow marrow. The spongy bone, is at the ends of the long bones. So like at the end of a long bone, you have what's referred to as like this spongy. It's small openings. It lightens the weight. It's called spongy because it kind of looks like a sponge. It has like open air pockets. Now in birds, to make them lighter, you've probably heard where they have hollow bones. That means they would not have as much of this compact bone that is very heavy. Their bones are made primarily almost all of spongy bone, which lightens the bone, which allows them to fly easier because then they're not as heavy. So that's the basic setup. And then this thing, this epiphyseal plate, this is where mitosis is really occurring. This is often referred to as the growth plate. So when you're going through growth and development, in order for the bones to grow longer, like think about what we did in botany with the meristems, this would be like where the growth is occurring, that is adding more bone in both directions to allow the bone to grow longer and longer as you grow and develop. Okay, so let's take a quick peek at what this bone marrow is. So you really have two types of bone marrow you need to know about. The first one is called red marrow. Okay, so the red marrow can be found inside your bones, found in things like your humerus, your femur, sternum, ribs, vertebrae, all over your body, and their job is to produce blood cells and clotting factors, mainly red blood cells, right? They also can make white blood cells and stuff like that. Your yellow marrow is primarily there to store fat, okay? So this is found in many bones where it stores a lot of your lipids and stuff. If you've ever heard of someone like say after Thanksgiving or something like that, they'll take the bones and make a stock. And maybe some of you have like a grandparent or a parent who has done that before, where they'll like boil the carcass, the bones of the thing, and then you get this really rich chicken broth. That's the fat. So they boil the bones because then what they get out of it is they get all this fat, and fat is often what gives the food the flavor. This is often what gives food the flavor that we like. It's that very like yummy, like, oh, it tastes so good. Not sugar, but that other kind of like sultry, like, good fatty flavor that you get like in a burger and stuff like that. So that's the main skeletal system. We'll talk about it tomorrow in class. I'll take any questions that you don't understand. Also, feel free to use your textbook as well as any other online resource to help you. All right, thanks a lot. See you guys later.